You don't actually know what love is, and the Bible gives us 4 words that will show us exactly why. You've experienced it before. You have. But every kind you have experienced has been incomplete. And the 4th one is the one most people never learn how to practice. You know the words. Love is patient, love is kind. You've heard them at weddings, at Bible studies, maybe even said them to yourself in the car, trying to talk yourself into staying or trying to talk yourself into leaving. But after hearing these words your whole life, I don't think you've ever stopped to ask the simple question, what does love actually cost? And there's a part of love that you've been calling readiness. And there's another part that you've never really tested. And by the end of this video, you'll know which kinds of love you've already experienced. And you'll understand why the love you're asking God for can't be separated from the love you're learning to practice. Now, I want to say something first. You're not new to this topic. You didn't find this video because nobody has ever talked to you about love. You've sat in church, you've done the healing work, prayed the prayers, taken the notes at conferences and highlighted the verses. And you're still sitting with the same question you've had for many years now. And that's not because you were not listening. A lot of what you were given was a feeling, explained as a definition. Love is patient, love is kind. And that's true. But you've heard those words your whole life. So why does it feel like you're still guessing? And I'm not going to answer that yet. What I am going to do is I'm going to show you the framework in that verse. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Now, the Bible was written in languages that had different words for love. Most of us know that. 4 of them come up in how people teach this. Storge, Phileo, Eros, and Agape. You already know 3 of these, even if you've never known their names. And one of them you've probably never been taught to look for. Now, before we go any further, I want to be honest with you. I'd rather tell you the truth than hand you a nice little chart that says more than what the Bible does. Scripture doesn't give us these 4 words neatly laid out together. Eros never appears in the New Testament at all. Storge doesn't stand on its own either. It only shows up built inside other compound words like philostorgos or astorgos. So this 4-word framework is not a system that Scripture itself gives us. It's a tool people created to later help explain what Scripture says about love. And knowing that difference is what separates reading the Bible from repeating a slide that you saw. So I'm not going to treat these 4 words like boxes God handed down to us. I'm going to use them as windows, ones that show you the different parts of love. And we'll start with the one that you already know so well you've probably stopped noticing it. So then why is it that someone can feel like home before they've ever even proven that they're safe for you? Now, storge is the love of family, the natural affection between a parent and a child, between brothers and sisters. It's something that nobody earns. It's just there before anyone has a chance to prove anything. Now, this is where it concerns you. You know the picture in your head, the one where you meet someone and it feels like home from day one. No awkward stage, no slow process of getting to know him, just instant comfort like you've known him your whole life. And that feeling can be real, but it was never meant to stand on its own. And this is where you need to be very careful. That kind of ease can be a good sign. It's not meaningless. It just doesn't prove that you're ready for a relationship, because storge exists before real commitment has been tested. Your family loves you on your worst day without ever having to decide whether they'll stay. That bond was already there. But a stranger who feels like family after 2 weeks hasn't chosen anything yet. He may have just made you feel something familiar, and that's very different. And feeling at home tells you how familiar someone feels. It doesn't tell you how faithful they'll be. And those are very different tests. Sometimes what feels like safety is just healthy recognition. And sometimes it's simply something you already know. And familiar isn't always healthy. The person who feels most familiar to you isn't always the person who's healthiest to you. Sometimes they feel familiar because they're kind or they're steady. And sometimes it's because they're repeating the same type of behavior that you've seen before. And you may not even know the difference yet. So I need you to think about that. When you picture the right relationship, are you picturing safety, or are you picturing something that's actually being tested? Feeling like home tells you how you already feel around someone. It doesn't tell you whether you can build a home together. And maybe you're thinking, okay, familiarity isn't enough. Fine. But what if he's actually my best friend? Good. Let's talk about that. Can someone know you deeply and still not be the person you're meant to build a life with? Phileo is friendship love. It's mutual, chosen, built through time together, laughter, shared interests. And it's the kind of bond where you actually like being around someone, not because you have to, but because you want to. And this one hits closer to home for me. You've called a man your best friend before, and somewhere in your mind that became proof he was the one. Because if he's your best friend and you're supposed to marry your best friend, then this must be it, right? Friendship by itself isn't the Bible's full picture of covenant love. Friendship is beautiful and it matters and it's important in marriage. It just isn't enough to build one on its own, because friendship doesn't always require you to stay when staying costs you something. You can be deeply known by someone and still not be deeply chosen by them. You can talk every day, laugh together, know exactly how they take their coffee, know what makes them angry and what makes them laugh, and there's still maybe no covenant that could connect you. And that's the difference between being known and being chosen. Now, you might have a fear. You're afraid that you're too picky. You've turned down men who made you laugh, who were good people, men who felt like real friends. And part of you has wondered, am I the problem? Now, here's another angle on it. Maybe the reason you have stopped, even though everything felt easy, isn't because something's wrong with you. Maybe some part of you already knows that friendship isn't the finish line. It's part of the journey. It's not the whole journey. And think about this for a second. Sometimes comfortable feels like love simply because nothing has asked you to sacrifice yet. And a relationship can feel easy because nothing in it has actually been tested. Nobody's had to forgive anybody. Nobody's had to tell a hard truth or stay when the feeling has changed, or choose the other person's good over their own comfort. So don't just ask, do I feel comfortable with this person? Ask what happens when the comfort disappears. And that's where you actually learn what the relationship is made of. Has the relationship ever felt easy to you, specifically because nothing in it has ever asked anything of you? And if friendship answers the question, do I enjoy this person? The next question would be harder. Do I actually desire this person? And that's where things get a little bit complicated. What if the spark you're waiting for isn't always proof of love? Eros is desire, the pull towards someone you don't have to force. The physical and romantic attraction that makes a relationship feel alive. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. It's real, it's part of being human, and you don't have to feel ashamed of it. But here's where it gets a little bit uncomfortable, and someone needs to say it plainly. You've walked away from good men after 1 or 2 dates because you didn't feel it right away, and you called it discernment. Sometimes it was. I'm not going to tell you it never was, but sometimes, if you're honest, it's something else. Maybe you've spent years choosing intensity over safety, and somewhere along the way you started mistaking absence of intensity for absence of a future. Let me be specific so you don't hand this over to someone else. You've told yourself you're waiting for the spark because you're spiritually mature now, because you know your worth, because you're not going to settle. But sometimes the real reason is that the spark has never taken you somewhere safe. It's taken you into situationships toward men who disappeared once things got a little too serious, toward people who wanted the feeling but not the responsibility. So now you don't trust anything that doesn't come with that same rush, because the rush is the only thing that has ever felt like proof. And here's something that nobody tells you. Anxiety can feel a lot like attraction. The waiting, the wondering, the checking on your phone. Does he still like me? Why hasn't he texted? What does this message mean? And all of that could feel like chemistry. But peace can feel boring when chaos is what you've learned to call passion. I'm not saying every calm relationship is automatically a good one. I'm saying that you shouldn't confuse anxiety with attraction, and don't confuse peace with boredom. Sometimes peace feels boring because chaos has trained you to call adrenaline love. And that's a hard thing to admit, but it can genuinely change the way you date, because now you can ask a better question. Not, do I feel the rush? But who am I becoming around this person? Am I becoming more honest? Am I becoming more secure? Am I becoming more like myself? Or am I constantly trying to earn their attention? Now, I want to be careful with you here. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about being honest about what you're actually looking for. Eros was never meant to carry a relationship by itself. It wasn't built for that. It's one part of the relationship, not the whole thing, because the spark can be loud and still be wrong. And you might oftentimes not feel the spark and you're still growing. So if the spark is not there for a season, would you still know how to stay? Because now we've reached the part where the Bible stops asking what love feels like and starts showing us what love does. Everything so far has been leading to here. This is where this video turns. The question stops being, what kind of love am I feeling? It becomes, what does love look like when it costs me something? And that's where Paul takes us in 1 Corinthians 13. Notice what he does. He doesn't define love by telling you what it feels like. He shows you what it does. Love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't brag. It isn't proud. It doesn't dishonor people. It isn't selfish. It doesn't keep a list of every wrong. Paul isn't giving you a feeling. He's showing you a way to live, a choice that you have to make again and again, especially when it's inconvenient. Paul isn't only asking who loves you. He's asking what kind of person you're becoming. And that's a much harder question to answer. So here's the real question this whole video has been building toward. Not which kind of love am I getting, but do I actually know how to love when it's costing me something? Now, I want to say something before you say it, because I already know what you might be thinking. I've already done the work. I know how this goes. I've healed. I'm ready to receive this kind of love. And I hear you, and I believe that you've done the work, but I want you to listen to this for a quick second. Agape was never described as something that you sit around waiting for someone else to have you experience. Scripture calls you to live it too, long before a husband shows up to be the test case. Let me make this practical, because I don't want to use vague language so that it can become easy to avoid. You say that you've forgiven him, but you still check every new man against what he did. You notice the way he talks, the way he acts, something that reminds you of him, even if he doesn't know he's doing it. And suddenly you're running a background check in your mind, already bracing for the old pain. That isn't agape toward your future. It's fear acting like healing. And I want to be clear about something. Agape doesn't mean having no boundaries. It doesn't mean staying around someone who keeps hurting you or ignoring red flags or calling abuse love. You can forgive someone and still keep a boundary. You can tell the truth and still walk away. You can want someone's good without giving them access to you. I don't want you leaving this thinking love means becoming a doormat, because that's not what Paul is teaching. The part that I want you to hear is that maybe you're afraid all the healing that you did wasn't enough. That fear doesn't mean that you failed. It might mean that you're finally close enough to see the next layer, and you can't see certain things from far away only once you've grown. Don't treat the next layer as proof the first one didn't matter. It did. Now, I want to be honest with one more thing, because I don't want to trade one oversimplified answer for another. Agape isn't a feeling that you're owed, and it doesn't replace storge, phileo, or eros. A real marriage needs affection. It needs friendship. It needs attraction. It needs covenant. All of it. What agape does, it tests whether those other kinds of love can hold up when life gets hard, or whether they only ever worked in the easy seasons. That's why this is so powerful. It doesn't erase the other kinds of love. It exposes them. So let me turn the mirror on you. Where are you calling fear discernment? Chemistry, confirmation. Familiarity, peace. Where are you asking someone else to hand you a kind of love that God is already teaching you how to practice? Think about that question. Where in your life right now could you practice agape before you ever meet the man you're asking God for it with? And don't answer too fast. The answer might be closer than you think. I want you to change the way you see your waiting, because I don't want you leaving this video feeling condemned. You haven't been failing this whole time. You've been learning, you've been growing, building toward a kind of love nobody ever told you how to live out. Every season that felt like waiting may have been teaching you something that you didn't have the words for yet. Now you do. Now you do. Maybe the point was never simply to make you ready to receive love. Maybe God's been teaching you how to recognize it, test it, and live it. And that changes the prayer. Instead of only saying, God, send me someone who loves me, you can also pray, God, teach me what love really is and teach me how to live it. Now, I want you to say this with me. God, I don't just want to receive agape. I choose to practice it, starting now with what's already in front of me. Now, please comment one Greek word that hit you the hardest in this message. Was it storge, phileo, eros, or agape? And before you leave, remember the question from the beginning. What does love actually cost? Now, storge taught you what it feels like to belong. Phileo taught you what it feels like to be known. And eros taught you what it feels like to desire. Agape asks whether you know how to stay once love stops being easy. Maybe the question was never just, where is my love? Maybe it was always, do I know what love looks like once it stops being a feeling? The love you've been asking God for isn't something you're sitting around waiting to receive. It's something you already have the chance to practice starting today. And once you understand what love is, there's another question that you can't avoid. How do you know whether the person you're dating is actually capable of giving it? And that's a different question, and it's worth talking about, because knowing what love is and knowing whether someone is actually loving you are not the same thing. And that's where the next conversation begins.